Hey there, everybody. This is Dev Biker again, and we're going to take a look at some of the more advanced lighting features that you can do with iCue and Corsair's RGB fans and strips. So we've talked about this a little bit before, but we're going to go into a bit more detail this time. And this time also we have something new in that you'll actually be able to see what's happening with a couple of fans that I'm working with, so you can get an idea not only of what it looks like in the user interface, but what it looks like on the fans as well. So the first thing I'd like to show you before we get rolling into the other features is something new with iCue called Instant Lighting. Now you'll see Instant Lighting on the menu of iCue, and when you drop it down you'll have several colors to choose from. And what you do is you choose a color and it will change all of the lights on your system to that color. So if you want to change everything to red, you select red. If you want to change everything to green, you select green. If you want to change everything to blue, you select blue. One of the really cool things is you can actually turn everything off by selecting black. And this turns all the lights off that are supported by instant lighting. There are a couple of devices that instant lighting doesn't support. Those include things like the RGB RAM and some of the H100i V2, for example, coolers. The older coolers, the non-pro coolers, aren't yet supported by instant lighting, but they will be. When you want to disable instant lighting, you can click the disable instant lighting button, but you can also do that right from the instant lighting menu by hitting the X right here, and it will revert you back to whatever the lighting setup for your current profile is, in this case, Rainbow Wave. So the next thing I want to walk through is the ability to control individual LEDs and to apply effects or colors or whatever at the individual LED level. This of course applies to fans as well as and strips. So right now we have Rainbow Wave and it's applied to both of the fans that we're looking at. So I'm just going to go ahead and change Rainbow Wave to a static color. And we'll make this static color, let's make it blue. Now you'll notice in the static colors you have basic colors available here. You can also, by the way, create a custom palette, and when you click on basic it will actually switch to your custom palette. So you can add different colors in here that provide you with a custom palette with whatever colors that you want to do. So it's a good way for you to save some different custom colors. Now if you want to change a color on here, so let's say I want to change this purple a little bit, I want to make it a little bit more red, right? And you click that little box again and it will set that as the custom color, and you'll be able to see this custom color on any other strip or fan or whatever. Now by default, it applies it to all of the LEDs on the current lighting channel. So this lighting channel has 2 LL fans, and I just want to apply this particular color to one of the center LEDs. So I'm going to click that individual center LED, and you'll notice it's now applied only to that center LED. If I just click another LED, it's going to apply it just to that other LED. If I want to add LEDs, I press and hold the control key on my keyboard and I click the additional LEDs that I want to add it to. So you'll notice that we now have the top and bottom LEDs as this custom purple color. If I want to have another color in the middle, I would add another effect. So we'll go ahead and add another effect, and we'll make this one a static color as well. And you'll notice that it changed everything to white because this static color is actually on top of the other static color. So we'll talk a little bit more about how the layers work, but for now I'm going to move it down, and it's probably tough to see that the rest of those 2 middle ones that we already changed, they changed back. So I'll go ahead and set this maybe to green, There we go. And then I'm going to apply it only to the other two LEDs in the middle. And so now I have two LEDs with this green color. I have two LEDs with my custom purple color set up on the channel. If you want to apply a setting to an entire fan all at once, what you can do is, let's go ahead and add another static color in here. And let's make this static color, let's make this yellow. Okay, so, ooh, yellow doesn't show up too well. Let's make it, how about that light blue? There we go. And you'll see that because this is on the bottom, it only applied to the LEDs that we didn't already have effects for. But if I move this up to the top, it now applies to all the LEDs. Well, I want to take these center LEDs out. So I can actually control, drag over the center LEDs, and they'll be removed from the selection. If I want to add them back in, I can control drag over them, and notice how it's highlighting the LEDs and changing them. As I control drag, I can select and deselect individual LEDs from the effect. And I can actually come in here and say, you know what, I want to deselect all of these, and I just want this one particular color on the four corners. Right? There we go. And so I've now actually customized and tweaked exactly which LED is what color. So you can do this with any effect. I can actually come in here, for example, and add everybody's favorite rainbow wave. And I'll keep that one at the top. And what I'll do is I'll apply rainbow wave to just the ones that aren't selected by my custom colors. So there we go. So now I actually have static colors on some of my LEDs, and I have rainbow wave on some of the other LEDs. And I can apply these effects however I want. You can do some of this stuff with layering as well, but right now I just wanted to show you how to select and apply effects to custom LEDs. Next, let's go ahead and take a look at what layering does for us and the different things that we can do with layers. So I'm going to go ahead and remove all of these effects from my fans, and you'll see that now they're black. They're, well, actually not black. They're just not lit up at all. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add an effect in here. In this case, I'm going to add, let's go ahead and add visor. And we'll make this alternating between red and blue. And I'll go ahead and slow it down so that way we can see the visor effect playing across. So the visor effect alternates between red and blue, kind of goes back and forth and switches between the different lights. And I have it applied to all the fans. Now you'll notice that visor doesn't light up all of the LEDs at any one point in time. It only lights up some of them. So I can go ahead and I'm going to add another effect in here. And in this case, I'm going to do a static color, and we'll make this static color, we'll make it, let's make it like a grayish, so it's not quite so bright. Okay. So you can see it's a lighter white now. And you'll notice what's happening is the effect, the visor effect, is actually running on top of this base color that we've created or that we've applied. And So the layer is actually applied on top of this static color. If I remove it, we go back to just the visor. And so it's actually running on top of this other effect. So this allows us to do some really, really interesting things with layering different effects and how the different effects play together. So for example, I can actually have two visors running on this particular channel. Let's do visor. Right? And so you'll see they kind of play off of each other. If I change the speed of one, then one's going to be very fast. And you can get some really bizarre effects going as you layer different items. So these layers also allow you to do things like, say, if you want, you can actually have certain layers partially opaque. Right, so I can come in here and add a static color of white. And you'll notice in this case, I now have the white on top, so we have no visor. But if I change its opacity, you'll see that the visor effect actually starts shining through just a little bit, right? And so if I change the color of this, it will actually change the color in which the visor is rendered as well. So as I change it to a green, the green will actually blend in just a little bit based on the opacity with the visor effect. So this is something that we weren't even able to dream of in Link, and it's you can get into some really, really cool, interesting stuff when you start playing with how these layers work together. The layer also lets you do things like effectively control the brightness. So by setting the opacity, I can make it very bright or I can make it very dim, right? So I can actually have this very dim background color with my visor actually shining through. Let me use the arrow key. So I can use the arrow key if dragging isn't quite accurate enough. So I'm pressing my arrow key on my keyboard to increase the opacity. But you can do other things as well. So if you want to have more of a breathing effect, so you can do gradient. So gradient is one of the custom effects. You can do some pretty interesting things with this. Let me change this visor though to a static color. And we'll make this a static blue so that we can see what happens with the gradient. And so with the gradient, you select the color that you want, and then you also select what the strength of it is. And you put your different points in place, and then I'll make this 10%, and then 50%. Now what you want to do is you want to have your starting and end point really be the same, so that way it cycles. So you'll notice now I have something of a blue and white breathing effect, and it's never all blue. It's just a little bit of blue, right? Because you'll see I have that 10% opacity set here. So this actually gives me a pretty interesting breathing blue and white effect. You can, if I change this static color to red, it'll now be this breathing red and white effect. Again, it's the layers one playing on top of the other. So let's quickly walk through what some of the different predefined effects are. Of course, you have rainbow wave, and you can control what the direction is, whether it's going to the left, going to the right, what the speed is, whether it's fast or slow. So pretty simple. We have spiral rainbow, which is a little bit different in that it kind of spirals around all the different lights. I think it's a little bit cooler. We can slow that down, and we can send it either clockwise or counterclockwise. and the default rainbow, which just cycles through all the different colors and keeps them all the same. I find this one a little bit boring, but that's just me. You might, hey, this might be your thing. Don't know. Then we have color shift. This is where the colors shift from one to the next. And you can either have it do alternating colors, and you can pick those two colors. Of course, you can also select from the custom palette that we saw before. So I'm going to go ahead and select two colors from my custom palette. And this will shift between that pink and red. Or of course you can do the basic colors. So there's my color shift and color pulse. Very similar. This though, it kind of flashes from one, then it flashes to the next. So we can have this also alternate. And just like with anything else, we can do our basic colors here, or we can select from our custom color palette. Color wave does a wave of different colors going between the different fans. Again, random or alternating. You can also set the direction going to the left or going to the right. Sequential lights the LEDs up sequentially, as the name implies. You can also specify a color, in which case it will do this. And then you can specify what the speed is and what the direction is. Strobing. This is probably if you want to give someone a headache. Strobing is one of those ones that you would certainly do with different layers. Rain. This is one of my favorites. I'll actually use the link rain, which we'll talk about later. On the fans and on the strips, this actually appears to do kind of random LEDs, lighting them up in different colors. Pretty neat. Visor. Again, a holdover from link. And we can have random colors or alternating colors as well. Marquee. This alternates different lights on and off. Again, this is one of those ones that might be a little bit better with a base color in a different layer. Temperature. So you can actually have your the lights lit up based on the temperature of different items. So in this case, Core 1, or you can select any of the other temperatures that iCue monitors. So for example, you might want to do the coolant. And if you do the coolant, right, so your top temperature would probably be 40. This might be, say, 36, right? Because your coolant temperatures are going to be a little bit of a narrower range than your CPU temperatures. Arc is another one of our predefined colors. Heartbeat, which is kind of neat. You can have this going inward or outward. And then last, not least, color warp, which winds up giving you something of a rainbow effect as well. Now let's go ahead and do a quick walkthrough of what the different custom effects are that we can apply. Now we've already seen static color. This is under the custom effects, and this is about the most simple of them all. It allows you to apply a static color either to an entire fan, a set of fans, or individual LEDs. We've already played with this one quite a bit. The only other thing that may be worth mentioning is the opacity. Not only does it allow other layers to shine through, it also helps to, if you want to set the brightness, you can actually turn the brightness down by setting the opacity. Moving right along, we also have solid. Now, solid is, you would think that solid and static color are the same, but really they aren't. So solid allows you to apply solid colors to the fan and allows you to do segments of different colors. So for example, if you wanted to do a stoplight effect where they flip between green, yellow, and red, you could actually do that with solid. So what we would do is we'd start, our first color would be green, and then we go ahead and we would say, so it's going to be green for, let's say 0.3 seconds. And then we're going to go ahead and add another one. Now you'll see it kind of flipping over there in the background. We'll make this one yellow, and now you see it changing. And it'll be yellow for, there we go, up to half a second. And then this is going to be a long red. So there we go, I'll make this one red. And so now it's actually going to alternate between green, yellow, and red. This is actually going through this in 1 second, so it's actually going through quite rapidly. If we want to extend the time, we can say the lighting time is going to be 10 seconds. So we set it to 10 seconds. And what it's going to do is it's actually going to adjust the time for all of the different blocks. It'll keep them relatively the same, so that proportionally they'll be the same. But now instead of going through the entire cycle in 1 second, it goes through the entire cycle in 10 seconds. And you can also change the intensity, right? So if I can take this down to 50%. For the red, 50% for the green. And so they won't be quite as bright. It'll be a little bit dimmer. So this is very similar to setting the opacity. And it will actually function very similar to the opacity when you have other layers involved. The next one is gradient. So gradient, I personally find far more interesting than solid because what gradient will do is it will alternate between the different colors in a gradient instead of like we saw in the solid, it just flipped from one color to the next. Here it's actually going to transition a bit more slowly. One of the things that you want to do with gradient is you want to have your first point and your last point to actually be the same. I'll show you what happens if you don't. So we'll go ahead and we'll do this one as a gradient between blue and white. And so you'll see it's actually kind of pulsing between blue and white. It's not flipping. The color isn't immediately changing, but it's changing on a gradient. Now, what happens if you don't have the last point the same as the first point is you'll actually wind up with this kind of flashing effect as it flips from the last point back to the first point. I personally don't like that. I like to have a much smoother transition, so I like having the first one and the last one be the same. This is where you can also go in and you can do your own rainbow effect if you like. So I'm going to set my first and my last to red. I'm going to add a couple more in here. All right, and I'll do red, yellow, green. We have blue. Let me get the purple in here. There we go. That'll be purple. Let's go ahead and move these around a bit. And now you'll see that we have something of a rainbow color. Again, we can adjust the time for this. I can set it to 5 seconds. So 5 seconds, it will cycle through a gradient through all the different colors in the rainbow. If I don't want any one of them quite so intense, I can turn the intensity down as well. So this is where you can get and do things that are really interesting with different color schemes that you want to try and do. Next, we have wave. So if you thought the rest were interesting, this actually kind of kicks it up a notch in that what it does is it creates a wave that goes through the different lights. So let me increase the lighting time here so that we can actually see what's going on. So you'll notice it's actually going through the lights starting in the center of one and moving through and going to the rest of the lights. Now, how fast does it go? Depends on the velocity. So we can increase this to, say, 20 lights per second. Then it'll go very quickly every time it runs through. Right? Or we can slow it down to 5 lights per second. And you'll see it's going much more slowly now. Of course, we can change the time. You can also control how long the tail is. So these are how many lights are going to be lit up at any one time. So if you increase the tail to, say, 8, you'll notice it now has more lights lit up at any one point in time. And we probably need to increase that velocity a little bit so that it actually cycles through all of the lights within the time frame of the wave. Now, right now we just have this at one color, but this will actually apply a gradient. So the colors will change. It will start with white and they will alternate and become blue as it goes through. You can have any number of these colors in. So we can have it go from blue to white to blue to red. And this gives you, again, some very interesting effects that you can play with. Ripple is very similar to wave, except that ripple applies to each individual fan. And we'll give this, let's set the lighting time up to 5. There we go. And this goes, I believe, from the outside in on each fan. No, it's not from the outside in. And again, we have a tail, we have a velocity. I'm going to make this 15. And so this allows us to do different ripple effects. Again, this will be a transition. We can have it change colors. And these will change not instantly, but it'll be on a gradient effect. So when you start combining some of these with some of the other different effects and layering them, it really allows you to do some amazing stuff that you weren't able to do, like even dream of at all with Link. And to round out the lighting, let's take a quick look at the lighting link effects. So you have the predefined effects, you have the custom effects. And these effects can be applied to one channel. But if you want to have an effect that actually runs across all of your channels, that's where lighting link comes in. So as soon as you select a lighting link effect, in this case, spiral rainbow, what it's going to do is it's actually going to apply that effect to the other lighting channels that you have. So if we take a look at some of my other lighting channels, you'll see that they have this spiral rainbow effect applied on them as well. And what this does is it actually synchronizes the lighting effect across all of the connected lighting channels. So you can do this with any of the lighting link effects, whether that be rainbow wave, right? So of course we've got our rainbows, or things like visor. So visor is actually going to be kind of cool. You'll see it actually light up the fans eventually, because what it does is it actually runs a visor effect across all of the different channels that you have. So this visor is actually running across all the different fans, as well as my keyboard, my mouse pad, my mouse, my headset stand, all those devices, this visor happens to be running across. And so you see it occasionally hit the actual fans that we're looking at, because I've got a bunch of other different channels. So that's visor. Rain will almost do like on the fans and on the strips. This seems to kind of do random random lights. On the keyboard, it actually kind of falls down from the top row of keys down to the lower rows of keys. But the effect on fans and light strips tends to be more randomized. This has actually quickly become one of my favorite effects. I'll put rain on with everything and have those random lights going on. Color shift. So this will do a color shift, and now all of the lights on all of the devices are color shifting in sync, which is something that certainly a lot of folks asked for from Link. Same with Color Pulse. Will work the same way. And Color Wave. Color Wave will play the color across, so you'll actually have colors going across all of the different channels that you may have. And then finally, last but not least, this one was one of the ones that was really demoed that was kind of cool, which is the type lighting. So the type lighting will work only if you have one of the Corsair keyboards. And what will happen is as you type, it will ripple and light up the different devices along the different channels. And so eventually, I'm sure you heard the keyboard. There we go. So we now have some ripples have finally made their way to that particular channel after going through just about all the other channels in my case, which is quite a few. So there we go. With that, let's kind of wrap it up. This has kind of been a walkthrough of all the different lighting effects and really just some tips on some of the different things that you can do. It's very powerful. There's a lot of functionality that is here in iCue between what you can do with the layering and layering different effects, as well as taking effects and applying them down to the individual LED. You can customize exactly what your lighting looks like in ways that we were never able to do before in Link. With that, this is DevBiker signing out, and I'll check you later.